We are live on all platforms. I got a really exciting topic to talk about today. So if you're going to be watching live, you're going to want to stick around because it's going to potentially could be life changing for you. So if you are just jumping on here, if you've never heard about me or seen me before, I help contractors in their construction business. So that's what we're talking about in terms of our target audience. However, whether you're in construction or not, you may benefit from this live that we're doing today because we're going to be talking about our mindset and how to remove limiting beliefs about ourselves. So if you know somebody else who would benefit from this live, do me a favor, go ahead and share this live, tag them or tell them to get on here or whatever, because I think this is going to be really beneficial for a lot of different people, regardless if you're a contractor or not. But we are going to focus on contracting. So let me get a little bit more light in here so you guys can see my pretty face. So, all right. If you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, can you let me know if you can hear me okay and everything's going good? Give me a thumbs up or a like or something in the comments. That way I can know that you guys are good to go. So let's get started. What is a limiting belief? Now, we've probably heard that term before. We may even know what we think it means. But basically, a limiting belief is just a belief that we have about something, usually pertaining to ourselves, a belief we have about ourselves. Thank you, Facebook. I appreciate it. So this can be all over the board. Like it can mean many different things. But what I want to talk about specifically is the self-talk that we have with ourselves. And that's basically the thoughts that we have in our head that we talk to ourselves about every day. Those can show up in thousands of different ways. It can be things that we do. You know, if we like my wife did it this morning and didn't even really realize that she was doing it. But she left, you know, went out to her car, was starting to back out of the driveway, and then she runs back in and she says, "It wouldn't be a Monday if I didn't forget something," right? And as innocent as that statement is, and even though it may be somewhat accurate, that is a belief pattern that we have, and now we're reinforcing it in our brain. So I'm going to get super technical here for a second, and I may lose some of you, but I'll try to be as keep it as dumbed down as I possibly can. In your brain, you have neural pathways. You may have heard of the term plasticity, neuroplasticity. You may have heard of terms like melanization, things like that. So anytime we learn something in our brain, I like to equate it to going into the woods. Let's say we're going to go into a hike in the woods and we're going through an area of the woods that's never been walked through. There's brush everywhere. It's kind of thick. You have to kind of like move plants out of the way and shrubs and stuff because it's so thick. There's no path there, right? So the first time that we learn a new skill set, the first time that we learn how to do something, we're going through the woods. It's hard, it's slow, it's kind of tedious, like we're not good at it, right? And we're creating a new path through the woods. Well, whenever we do that with our thoughts or even our physical actions, that's what we're doing. We're creating a new neural pathway in our brain. It's a new path for neurons to connect and talk with each other. Okay. If you go through it the first time, it's really hard to go through that. And then at the next day, you go through that same path. You can still kind of see where you went yesterday. The shrubs are maybe pushed out of the way a little bit. You can kind of see the path and you go through that path again. It's still a little rough. It's still hard, but you can start to kind of realize where you went the day before. And if every day you go through that same path, eventually, whether it's a week, a month, or whatever, over a period of time, you'll start to see dirt in the path, right? Because you're stepping on grass, killing the grass, moving it out of the way, crushing it. Then all of a sudden, a path forms. Okay. If you've ever been on any kind of path in the woods, like there's an actual path you can walk down. Sometimes you have motorcycle paths or four-wheeler paths or Jeep paths or whatever. There's always different types of paths. But I think we can understand the concept of going through the woods the first time is kind of hard to do. But if we've gone through a path that's already been down 100 times, it's much easier. You can see it. You don't even have to think about it. You don't have to go halfway in and go, okay, did I turn left here yesterday, or did I turn right? This is where I went, right? When the path is already formed, you no longer have to think about it. This is the creation of neural pathways, and every time you walk on that pathway, it insulates that pathway, meaning it makes it stronger and easier. That's the myelinization, not myelinization of the neural pathway. It's insulating the pathway, making it thicker and thicker and thicker. So therefore, it's strong. This is what we do with our limiting beliefs. Whether it's a good belief or a bad belief, it's this exact same process. Your brain cannot tell the difference between a good belief pattern or a bad belief pattern. Okay. And here's something else, is that your brain cannot tell the difference between reality and what you visualize in your head. So some of you may be familiar with visualizing like the future, visualizing winning a race, visualizing doing different things. If you visualize stuff in your brain and you apply emotion to that, meaning let's say you're a marathon runner and you're going to go run a race coming up, and you're sitting in the morning and you visualize, running the race and crossing over the finish line. You visualize that. Well, you should apply emotion to that. How does that make you feel? What's the emotion that you have when you cross that finish line? Because your brain cannot tell the difference between the visualization and reality if you apply emotion to it. It does not know the difference. Okay. So I know we're getting deep here, and stick with me. It's going to come back, and I promise. So I have a match coming up this week. I do competitive pistol shooting, and I have a match coming up this week in Northern Indiana. And so I will visualize, shooting the match, winning the award, the emotion that goes with that. I do all of that. Okay. When you have a limiting belief, you're doing the exact same thing. So my wife this morning, when she said it wouldn't be a Monday unless I forgot something, that is a limiting belief, right? Meaning Mondays, I always forget things. And so your brain will say, okay, noted. I'm making a note right here. On Mondays, I always forget things. And so every Monday, your brain will say, we got to make sure we forget something, because that's what you're telling it by reinforcing it, by saying these little things that we say all day long, our self-talk. It's called self-talk, what we say to ourselves. So if you're a contractor and you're on the job site working, and you make a cut, and then you go in and it's an inch too short because you looked at the tape measure backwards. It was upside down, and you thought you were cutting 67, but you looked at it upside down, so you cut 66. I know you guys know what I'm talking about, because everybody who's ever cut anything using a tape measure has done this. And then you go out there and you go in and you check it, and it's an inch short, and you say to yourself, oh, Brad, you dumbass, why did you do that? Why you always cut it an inch short? If I say that, even though I'm like getting onto myself, and even though I may not, I don't always do that, like I don't always cut it in short, maybe it happens 5% of the time, I'm reinforcing that belief in my head. And so every time I say that, whether I say it once a week, once a month, once a year, I'm reinforcing that in my head. And the more often you say things like that, the more you are myelinizing the pathway, the neural pathway, the more you are making that pathway stronger and more resilient, the more likely you are to do that again, because you're strengthening that limiting belief, right? Now, the limiting beliefs can come in many different ways, and I got a list here just so I wouldn't forget. These are some common limiting beliefs. I'm not good enough. I'm too old or too young. I don't have enough time. I'm not smart enough. I don't have enough experience. I'll never be successful. I don't have enough money. I'll never be one of the best. I'm not talented enough. I'll never be a great leader. I'm terrible at business. I'm terrible at hiring people. There's not enough good workers out there. The cost of materials are too high. People won't pay my rates. I tried charging more and everybody says I'm too expensive. If any of you have ever said anything like that to yourself or out loud to someone else, throw a 1 in the comments. Just want to take a little quick test. If you've ever said anything like that to yourself or out loud to someone else, just throw a 1 in the comments. I just want to get kind of a little bit of feedback to see if you guys have experienced that, or if maybe you don't have this problem. So I got one on TikTok who says he's got a 1. Another one's a 1. Yeah. We think this is harmless, right? And sometimes we even joke about it with ourselves. Jeff on Facebook, thanks for jumping in here and watching, Jeff. We've all said this, like we've done it no matter what. We've all done this. These are all harmful self-talk, limiting beliefs. And you need to eliminate those from your life completely, as much as you possibly can, because your self-image, what you believe about yourself, is made up by the self-talk that you have. So, we can look at certain people, maybe somebody who comes from a terrible background, like abused or, poverty or whatever, and they become uber successful. And we could say, oh, well, maybe they were the exception. Like maybe they were, Oprah Winfrey came from terrible abuse in a background, became wildly successful, right? And we can look at people that we know, people that are like, do drugs or do stupid things or turn into a criminal. And we're like, dude, why are you doing that? Like, you're an extremely talented and smart person. If anybody should be successful, it should be you, right? So we've seen all these different sides to it, all these different levels. It's because those people either had the right framework, meaning through mentorship or coaching or, parents, whatever, that they were able to overcome that mentally, or they had negative framework from the same. It can be a parent, it can be a relative, it can be a neighbor, a friend, it can be any of those things, right? And so depending on who we surround ourselves helps to alleviate some of that self-talk. If you've all heard the saying that you're the combined average of the 5 people you hang out with most, right? My friends that I hang out, my friend group from high school that I hang out with, we like to hang out and get stupid and tell jokes and be funny, make each other laugh. And I enjoy that. I really do. Like, we get together and play poker and do different events every once in a while. I enjoy, doing that because in a way it's kind of like reliving high school, like that personality in high school. But sometimes I don't want to be around them. And Jeff is one of my friends watching. Sometimes I don't want to be around my friends because they still have some limiting beliefs. They still have some beliefs around what it's like to have that friendship. And so I have to like limit myself to how much I want to be around certain people, right? Not that I don't enjoy being around my friends, I do, but sometimes like they start talking about things and it's like, I don't really want to care about talking about this. I don't care about talking about childish things that we used to talk about all the time. Like, that's not who I want to be. I may still do it when I get around them. Like, we all probably do that. We get around certain people and we tend to act a little bit different than we normally would. I think all of us would agree to that. But we want to try and limit who we hang out with, or we want to try and hang around with more people more often who exhibit the behaviors that we want to exhibit. So if your ultimate goal is to be a multi-millionaire, you wouldn't go and hang out with homeless people and expect to learn the skill sets and the mindset that you would need to become a multi-millionaire. You would need to go hang out with multi-millionaires in order to learn how they do things, the mindset they have, the skill sets, the self-talk, all of that stuff, so that it basically would rub off on you, right? Like, we want to have that type of effect by who we hang out with the most. So if you have limiting beliefs and every day we tell us, and it's most of the time they're harmless. Some of them are phrases that we say, we hear every day. We say, Like my wife, it wouldn't be a Monday if I didn't forget stuff, right? We don't think anything of that. And if you say it one time, it's not going to like automatically put you in this downward spiral of you have this limiting belief. But if we keep saying that over and over and over again, it will start to develop your neural pathways and it will become a habit. So one of the things that I learned, there's a book called With Winning in Mind. It was written by a guy named Lanny Basham. He was a Olympic shooter. I can't remember the sport off the top of my head, but it's like the rifles where they shoot in the Olympics, in the Summer Olympics. And he was a gold medalist. And the book is really about mindset. Now it's geared towards professional athletes, PGA golf players, basketball players, so on and so on, archery and all these different things. But I read it for my hobby, what I shoot. Like I said earlier, I do competitive pistol shooting. And, one of the things that that we do when we shoot, like when I go shooting and I shoot with friends and stuff, is if we were to hit a non-threat target, which is basically a civilian, like the way I shoot IDPA, which is a bunch of different targets, and we have civilians that you're not supposed to shoot, and so sometimes you end up shooting it just because of the difficulty of the stage. And then we'll say things like, "Oh man, I always hit non-threats." That's that limiting belief that we're creating new pathways for, right? And so what you need to do is, instead of saying these little sayings, is you need to reframe the words you use. So if I hit a non-threat, this is what Lanny says in his book. Excuse me. You should say, "Wow, that's not like me. That's not like me to hit a non-threat." Now, it doesn't matter if 99% of the time in that scenario you hit a non-threat, meaning that that's the chances of you hitting a non-threat are very high. It doesn't matter. You start reframing your brain to say, it's not like me to hit a non-threat. So in my wife's scenario, she would say, "Oh, it's Monday, but it's not like me to forget things on Monday." So that's how you start changing your behavior. If you have self-talk that's limiting, that's negative self-talk, right? We need to start being mindful. We need to start paying attention to what we're saying to ourselves on a daily basis, because it shapes our path going forward. It doesn't matter what it is. It can be relationships, it can be work, it can be sports, it can be learning, it can be anything. And we have, thousands and thousands of little self-talk sayings every single day that we do that we don't realize actually hurt us. So some of the ways you can remove limiting beliefs is, the first thing you want to do is you want to write down what you like say to yourself. Write down like the sayings that you say and identify them. So if you catch yourself, "Oh man, I always cut it in short, you dummy," I have to be mindful of that and be like, and stop and be like, okay, and then write it down, right? You have to do some tracking. Now there's some different worksheets you can go online and download, like mindfulness tracking, daily mindful, tracking worksheets, something like that. And there's all kinds out there you can track. And really the mindfulness part of it is not just limiting beliefs. It's about whatever thoughts or emotions you have throughout the day, you're tracking those, and you start to take inventory of what you're saying. If you really, really want to do a good job at this, like every time you say something, either write it down for the first time or like put a check mark or something next to it every time you say it, because you may say it 15 times a day and not even realize that you say it that much, right? So if you are very mindful and purpose and intentional in tracking this, just after 1 week, you probably blow your mind, like explode your brain of how often you have negative self-talk and how often you have limiting beliefs. Now, so step one is write them down. Write down what your limiting beliefs are, your self-talk. Step two is identify the accuracy. So in my wife's case, she may say, I always forget things on Monday, and then write that down. And then she would self-evaluate. Now, is that really true? Do I always forget things on Monday? If I look back over every single Monday of my life, have I always forgotten stuff on Monday? And most of us would say that's probably not a true statement, right? If it happens 25% of the time, it's not a majority of the time. So therefore, we can say that that's not a true statement because it's not an always statement. I don't always forget stuff on Monday. So therefore, it's not a true statement. So we would want to eliminate that limiting belief. And the way you do it is by changing with positive affirmations, which is what I was saying earlier. So in my wife's case, if she came back in, she could say, oh, I forgot my belt. It's really unlike me to forget my belt, right? That's a reframe. And now you're going to create a new neural pathway, and you're going to say that this is not like me. It's not like me to forget my belt. And so now what you're doing is you're telling your subconscious, you're telling your identity, the next time you forget your belt, you're going to say, that's not like me to forget your belt. And so now your brain's going to be like, okay, it's not like us to forget it. So let's make sure we don't forget it, because it's not like us to forget it, right? You could say things like high performing athletes don't forget their belt. If I want to be a high performing athlete, I wouldn't forget my belt or something like that. Now, you wouldn't want to put that's kind of an opposite of putting a self-identifying statement in there. It's better to say, it's not like me to do this. It's not like me to measure an inch short. It's not like me to hit a non-thread. It's not like me to forget my belt on Mondays. You start changing your brain, start training it. It's just like anything else. You train it. The last thing is, it's going to take repetitions. It's going to take a while. You're creating a new path in the woods. So it's going to be hard in the beginning. You're going to have to do it multiple times to create that path, right? So here's what's interesting about limiting beliefs. This is where we kind of get into the deep psycho side of it, okay? Most of our beliefs of the world are fully developed by the age of 8. So most of us have a worldview belief of everything by the age of 8. And that's why they say when you raise kids, their behavior is essentially developed by the age of 8. Some of you may not know that. This might be hearing this for the first time, but this is true. That's why it's super critical when your kids are at a young age to really develop them. And here's a little side tip, bonus tip. And if you do this, this is not to make you feel bad about yourself, but you should, for development purposes, you should keep any forms of technology away from your newborns until the age of 2. It saddens me. I get really upset when I go to a restaurant and there's a young couple sitting next to us with a 1-year-old sitting in a high chair, and they have an iPad or a phone in front of their face, and the young couple are just talking, and they're using that iPad or phone as a babysitter so that they can have conversation, not realizing how much they're destroying their learning abilities of their kids. This is not me talking. This is proven fact by scientists and experts. You should not let your kids be exposed to any technology before the age of 2. That includes TV, computers, iPhones, iPads, anything with technology before the age of 2. There's a book called Brain Rules for Baby. I think that's what it's called. Something like that. Brain Rules for Baby. If you have a newborn, go read that book, because it will literally change your entire mind about how you raise your kids. Okay, that's a little off topic. But what I was saying is that your beliefs are happening by before the age of 8. A lot of times we have things that happen to us. Maybe we have an alcoholic father. And so as a kid, you learn certain behavioral patterns that your father does. You learn that if they come home when they come home, the way that they do something in the first 1 minute will determine whether or not it's going to be a good night or a bad night. You start to learn how to deal with that, how to cope with it, because as a child, you're trying to survive, right? You're not trying to think about, oh, how's this going to affect me when I'm 35 years old? You're just trying to survive. And those behavioral patterns that we develop keep us alive, keep us healthy, keep us somewhat from being depressed if it works out, while you're a teenager and young kid, teenager, up until you're 18 or 20 or whatever, when you move out of the house and you can get away from that bad situation. But what's happened is you've had years and years and years of that neural pathway beat into, almost like a concrete path in the woods now. It's not just a dirt path, it's like a concrete path. And then those beliefs that saved us and served us as children no longer serve us and actually hurt us as adults. There's a transition period that we have to go through between childhood and adulthood where we shed all of the negative and bad beliefs that we had as a kid who actually kept us alive and now could actually be killing us, right? Because as a kid or a young adult, if we're depressed or something because we got abused, we may turn to alcohol or drugs to suppress those, that bad thing that happened. But as an adult, obviously it doesn't serve us anymore. Now it's killing us. So you have to identify these belief patterns, these limited beliefs that you had as a kid, and now you're an adult. It took me a long time to get rid of some limiting beliefs that I had in my business because of my parents. And I love my parents, and I still talk to them every day. I still love them. I have nothing bad against them. But my parents are very critical of me growing up, and my dad is a wheeler and dealer. He loves to wheel and deal. And there's nothing wrong with that. But that transferred over into my mindset when I started a business. And I was telling him, "Oh, hey, Dad, I'm starting a business, and how much you charge now? I'm charging $40 an hour." And his first response was, "You can't charge that much. You're screwing people. Like, how can you charge them that much?" And so that limiting belief, right? My dad's a dealer, wheeler and dealer. As an adult, doesn't serve me. As a business owner, does not serve me. And it took me several years to kind of get over that limiting belief of I can charge more and I am worth it. I provide the value to be worth what I charge. There's limiting beliefs around religion. A lot of people believe in the poor doctrine, which is you're not supposed to have money. It's bad to have money and have nice things and nice cars and nice houses because there's poor people all over the world that are suffering. And how can you as a Christian live like this? How can you have nice things if there's people in the world suffering when you're supposed to help the poor? Right or wrong, I'm not challenging anyone's belief on that. But if that is a belief that you have, it's going to prevent you from maybe achieving a better financial success or output in the future because you have this limiting belief around what's right and what's wrong around money in your religion. There was some head trash there that I had to kind of get through, and it's still like almost weekly I hear things about this, and I have to shield myself from those conversations. If I'm in a situation where I have to hear this, I have to intentionally block that part out, right? Sometimes it's our wife, our spouse, sometimes it's kids, sometimes it's our parents who are the toxic person in our life who's given us these limiting beliefs, and we have to just tune them out, or we have to reduce the amount of time that we spend with them, right? And so you have to be aware of this and make note of it, okay? So the there's a transformation that has to happen between childhood and adult to realize and identify some of these behavioral patterns and self-talk that we have, and then start changing it with positive reframes. That's kind of the word they use, it is reframe. You got to reframe your belief. And so it is a long process. It's not going to happen every day. Sometimes people make fun of having affirmations. There was a skit on Saturday Night Live with I forget his name now. His wife ended up killing him. It's right on the tip of my tongue. But he would have a skit where he would get up and look in the mirror and he'd say, I forget what he'd say, but it was like, I'm powerful and I'm smart and doggone it, people love me. Like, those are kind of what people make fun of when they talk about affirmations. When you say things like, I'm the best, I am likable, I am funny, I am this, and this. Like, those are kind of affirmations. And some people like to make fun of those. And I'm not a huge affirmation guy, meaning I don't say affirmations every day. But in terms of reframing your limited belief, it is, yeah, Phil Hartman. Thank you. Thank you, Michelangelo. I knew it was right on the tip of my tongue. Phil Hartman used to do that skit. I think it was Stuart Smiley, might have been his character in that, or something like that. Maybe I got that wrong. But anyways, you have to reframe your belief. And the quickest way to reframe your belief is to surround yourself with people that have the beliefs and the mindset that you want to acquire. That is the quickest. Imagine if you and this can apply to skill set too, by the way. But imagine you wanted to learn how to sail a boat. You've never been on a sailboat. You have no idea about sailing. You could go on YouTube and watch a bunch of videos on how to sail a boat and retain some information. You can go down to the local, port and rent a sailboat and try and figure it out on your own. But what do you think would happen if you had the opportunity to spend a week on a professional, like, racing sailboat team, right? Like the top of the top in sailboats. If you were able to go spend a week with a racing crew, do you think that you would accelerate your learning curve of sailing, as well as have the correct mindset around sailing, the correct foundation around sailing? Like, you would be fully immersed in that, right? It's the same thing that people talk about trying to learn another language. If I want to learn French or German, I can buy Rosetta Stone and maybe learn that. But if I move to Germany, I'm going to learn German a lot quicker, a lot faster, because I'm immersed in that culture. And now it almost becomes a survival where I have to learn it quickly, or maybe I can't order food, or I can't get stuff done, right? Can't get around town because I can't tell the driver where to go because they only speak German. Like, you will immerse yourself in that. And that is the quickest way to start to change your mindset. Now, obviously, you still have the self-talk you have to deal with. But when you immerse yourself with a group of people like-minded that you're trying to get to that point, it will shortly, like, greatly shorten the learning curve, and you will start to have success in whatever that is very, very quickly. Right. So that's why I always say the 5 people you hang around with is who you're going to be associated with. That's you're the combined average of those 5 people. So pick the 5 people you hang around with very carefully and eliminate the toxic relationships from your life. Okay. This is limiting beliefs. 99.9% of people's problems in life are because of limiting beliefs. Oh, I live in a poor neighborhood. I'm a certain race. I'm a certain color. I'm a certain demographic. I live in a certain area. Therefore, this is my expected outcome through society. That's all BS. It truly is BS. That's why I don't believe in this. I don't believe in racism. I don't believe in discrimination. I don't believe in any of that stuff. I don't believe it exists, is what I'm saying. Now, I'm not saying that people aren't racist and people don't discriminate. I'm talking about on a mass scale. It's not a result of society. It's a result of belief systems that we have that can come from society. It can come from our immediate, our influence, our parents, our neighborhoods. Yes, but that is not a life sentence. If you grow up in a poor area, or you grew up in a poor mindset household, that is not a life sentence that you have to now live like that the rest of your life. At any point in time, you have the ability to change that. You have the ability to actually change your mindset. And Random Highlight says, you are what you believe you are, whether you believe you can or can't, you are right. Yeah. Henry Ford, he says, if you think you're right, or if you think you can or can't, you're right. Henry Ford said that, and that's true. It's your belief. That's why we're talking about this. So when I talk to contractors and I say, hey, you need to raise your prices You need to be charging 100% markup so that you can get a 50% gross profit on your jobs. The first thing I always hear out of them is nobody's going to pay that much money. Nobody in my area charges that much money. That is a limiting belief. It's also not even correct, because in order for that to be a factual statement, you would, or that contractor would have had to have audited every single contractor in your city, in your trade. So if you're a roofer, right, and you say, I'm going to charge X, and you say, well, none of the other roofing companies are charging this much. The only way that's factual is if you polled every single roofing company. If there's 50 roofing companies in your town, you would have to talk to all 50 of those people, those companies, and find out what they charge before you can factually make that a statement. But the reality of it is it's all feelings, because we've talked to 2 or 3 contractors, because we know that there's 3 or 4 that we talk to that charge this much. Therefore, I associate that across the board as everybody does that. And that's not true. That's factually not true. That's why when people say racism exists, so you're telling me that you've polled every single person in the world and asked them about that, like to make that broad statement. It's not true, right? It's a belief that we have. It's a feeling based on emotions that we get because we raise our prices, and the first client that we talk to says, how much you're going to charge me $15,000 for that roof? I got 2 other estimates, and the highest one was $10,000. You're $5,000 over the other 2 estimates. You're ripping people off. How do you sleep at night? And we go, I mean, I don't know. Like, I mean, I am. It's too expensive. I don't know how. Am I ripping people off? That person said I was ripping somebody off. Is that true? Man, I got to think about this. And we let that bother us, and we start to believe those lies. It's not true. It's not true. You could present that price to 100 different people, and you will get some people that will tell you that you're ripping them off. You will get some people that say that's exactly what we were thinking, and you will get some people that will say, that's it. I thought it would be more than that. So how is that possible? How can this belief that one person tells us that we're ripping them off or that we're charging too much, if that were true, and you asked 100 people or gave that price to 100 people, all 100 people would tell you the same thing. You're too expensive. You're ripping people off, right? But we get one person, maybe 2 or 3 people that say you're too expensive. And now all of a sudden our belief to our self-talk says, oh man, before I used to close 90% of jobs, and now the last 3 jobs I haven't closed any. That's it's 0. Like, this is not true. This Brad guy, he's talking about raising his prices. He's crazy. Like, you can't do that. It just doesn't work in my area, Brad. You don't know my town. I'm not in this big city. I'm in a small area, and everybody knows everybody, and you just can't do that stuff here. Those are all limiting beliefs. Every one of those are limiting beliefs, right? Again, until you have 100% accuracy in what's being said, you cannot say it's a limiting belief. There's people that said, we will never go to the moon. There's people that will say we'll never land on Mars. And I can tell you right now, at some point in the future, we will land on Mars, right? So if you say it's never going to happen, that's a limiting belief because it's simply not true. There's people that say we'll never fly. People that say we'd never have a gas-powered automobile. You got to remember this too, guys. Everything is impossible until it's not impossible, until someone ignores all of the limiting beliefs and the beliefs in general about something and proves that to be incorrect and changes the way we think about things. Autonomous vehicles are coming. There will be a day in the future when every vehicle on the road is self-driving and no longer driven by a person. It may be 50 years in the future, but that day is coming. 20 years ago, people made fun of the Jetsons. A lot of us watched the Jetsons growing up. That's future. That's never going to happen. It's going to happen. We'll have flying cars someday. So it's the same with raising your prices, right? Yeah, but you can't go by that, Brad. You gotta, you can't do that when everyone else doesn't do that, because you're going to bid yourself out of the market. You got to look at what the market will bear and what the demand is. And yes, there is some truth in that. There is some truth in that. But what you're not taking into consideration is, if I have two companies that are identical and they live next door to each other, okay? Let's just say two electricians. Two electricians, they live next to each other in the exact same house. They have the same furniture, the same cars. Everything is identical, completely identical in terms of what they have. One of them charges $50 an hour for his time. The other one charges $75 an hour for his time. And you say, well, how's that possible? Well, it's simple. The $75 an hour guy values his time more than the other guy, and therefore he charges more. So he makes more money than the $50 an hour guy. Now, the difference is, if those two guys all go and bid on the same jobs every time, like every time there's a customer that comes in and those two guys bid on the job, compete with each other, some of the time the $50 an hour guy is going to win because the person's looking for the cheapest rate. Other times the $75 an hour guy is going to win because people associate higher price with higher quality. Okay, this is another belief that I haven't even tapped into yet. But a lot of times, the more you charge, the belief you have is that is a better product. It's the whole reason why Gucci and Lamborghinis and all these high-end profile things exist, is because people believe or perceive that the higher dollar amount equals a better quality or experience. And sometimes that's true. Sometimes you do experience a better quality or experience, but it's not always the case. Sometimes you can pay for something really expensive and not get a very good result. I remember one time I went to a very expensive steakhouse locally, and it was like, the kind of steakhouses that were like $50 for one steak. And I told him I think I wanted it medium, and it came out rare, like it came out crappy. I didn't even finish the steak. Now, that's just one simple mistake. They didn't cook it enough, right? But if I'm paying that much for a steak, you would expect that there's not going to be any errors whatsoever, because I'm paying a lot more money. Therefore, I should have a better experience. So to simply say, I can't charge $75 an hour because my neighbor is charging $50 an hour, therefore I'm not going to get any business, is not a true factual statement, because you have not polled or talked to every single client in your city. So it's all beliefs that we create in ourselves based on fragmented information, based on emotions, based on beliefs from our childhood. And so now we're basically transposing that into our business and what we think is capable. It's all, when it comes to your customers, it's simply a numbers game. There are people who are willing to pay for higher priority. There are people who are willing to pay for higher quality. There are people who believe that if you don't charge more, that you're not going to be able to deliver. I had this call last week, 2 weeks ago, with a potential coaching client, and he had just started a general contracting business. But prior to that, he had been a general manager for a service company that grew it to $2 million in sales. This guy was very capable of understanding business, but he was struggling in his own business that he had just started. Because it's one thing to grow someone else's business. It's totally different to grow your own from the ground up. And I was talking to him, and I told him what my monthly rate was. And he kind of took a second, and he goes, man, you need to charge more. You're not charging enough. Now, there's some controversy and things around it I'm not going to get into, but he was basing it on the fact that he does consulting because of his past, and he charges X amount, and he charges more per month than what I was charging him. And so because of that, he believed that what I was capable of helping him in his business was not as valuable, because he saw it as, you're not charging enough money, therefore you're probably not very good at coaching. And that was based on a belief that he had in what he was doing. Now we can get into semantics about different things, but my point is that people, not everybody is about price. As a matter of fact, for most people, price is number 3 on the list. It's like legitimately number 3 on the list is price. So whenever you're going in and you're thinking that I can't raise my price, I can't be the $75 an hour electrician because the $50 an hour next door, he's always going to beat me because it's all about price. That's not true. That's not true at all. Number 1 is the trust. Do they trust you that you're going to do the job the way that they think it should be done? And 2 is like the experience. What's that experience like? I call the $50 an hour guy, and because he's so cheap, he never calls back. His phone's ringing off the hook from the cheap clients because a cheap client is going to recommend a cheap client, and a cheap client's going to recommend a cheap client. An expensive client's going to recommend an expensive client. You see how that works? So if you go out there and you start cutting your prices and you're like, oh, I can't beat this $50 an hour guy, I'm going to have to lower my price. I'll match him. Actually, matter of fact, I'll beat him by $10. That way I'll get all his business. And this is the race to the bottom because we don't understand that, for one, $50 an hour is not even sustaining his business. He's charging $50 an hour because the electrician that he used to work for was charging $60 an hour. And he said, I'll just undercut him by $10 so I can get his business. And you see him charging $50 an hour. You're trying to charge 75 because this Brad guy told you to charge more. And you go out there and start charging them. And you're competing for the same client who is not the correct client. He's getting the cheaper client because his old boss was 60. Now he's at 50. He's picking up the cheaper clients. And you think you're going to get better clients by undercutting that and go down to $40 an hour. The lower your prices, the cheaper your clients. The higher your prices, the higher your clients. And when I say higher, I mean better quality of clients. Not everybody, like if I was Jeff Bezos, right? Do you think I would be hiring if I was building my yacht, I'm building a $20 billion yacht or whatever crazy number they spend. Do you think I'm hiring the cheapest yacht builder out there? Or do you think I'm going to hire the one that has the best reputation, regardless of the price? It's because I'm hiring the one that has the best reputation. I'm not going to put my family and myself in danger out in the ocean by hiring the cheapest yacht builder. So the higher quality clients always expect to pay more because their mindset is of, if you want higher quality things, you have to pay more money. So when you raise your prices and you have pushback from your clients, it's not because your prices are too high. It's because you have the wrong clients and you have a limited belief around what is possible to charge. If I'm charging $50 an hour now and I say, okay, Brad, okay, listen, I'll raise it to 75 because you told me to, right? I don't think anybody's going to pay that, just to be honest with you, but I'll try it. I'll give it a good college try and I'll raise my prices to 75. And somebody calls me that day and I go, hey, yeah, this is Brad's Electric. Hey, what do you guys charge per hour? You're going to say 75 because, Brad told you to. If you don't believe that person is going to pay 75 and you say, well, I charge 75 an hour. I know it's high, but that is what I charge. Like, just the way you react to that is going to turn them off. So a lot of this is the energy that you bring to the call because you have that limiting belief underlying what you can charge, which is $75. You've always charged 50. Now you've gone to 75. You have that limiting belief of nobody's going to pay this. And that will come through on your phone calls. That will come through in your meetings. They will pick up on that. They will pick up on that energy. And something will be like, something's not right about this guy. Like I think he's ripping me off because he's telling me 75, but there's no confidence that goes with that. That's why you have to change your belief in order to make that work. If you call me and I'm at 75 and I'm very confident, and someone's like, "Hey, what do you charge per hour?" I say, "Yeah, I charge 75 an hour." Matter of fact, I charge 75 an hour. Oh my, 75? Your neighbor's only $50 an hour. Yeah, I've been told that. Like, I'm not biting into that. I'm not like, "Oh, I'll do it for 45." No, it's 75 an hour. Well, when can you get to it? That's a great question. I have some availability in a couple of weeks. Well, he can get to it in a week. Okay. Well, if the time frame is a deal breaker, totally understand that. But if you're wanting it done in a couple of weeks, then give me a call back and we'll get you on the schedule. Like, I'm not buying into this. I have to try and close them no matter what and lower my prices. Like, I'm confident in what I do. I'm confident in the prices that I charge. I know I provide value to my clients. So you can't have this limited belief over, well, nobody's going to pay that much. Nobody's going to pay that much. I'll give you an example of a limited belief I had for many, many years in my business. And then after this, I'll get to the questions that came in. In my business, we did remodeling and we also did handyman. I kind of had like two different divisions. In the handyman, which I call service work, most of that was by the hour. A lot of it was just small, like 2-3 hour jobs by the hour. I had a minimum charge, but I never charged a trip charge. I never charged any kind of trip charge for like 9 years in business because I always thought trip charges were a scam, a ripoff, right? That old limiting belief. And finally, I was changing my belief, starting to realize like I got to make money in my business, blah, blah, blah. And so I started implementing a trip charge, a $25 trip charge. Roll a truck out there. And I just knew I was going to get all kinds of pushback from people. And so the very first call that I had, hey, what's your charge? Yeah, we have I don't remember exactly what scenario I had, because at one time I had a 1 hour minimum, then I had a 2 hour minimum, and so on and so on. I don't remember exactly when that was, but I was like, we have a 2 hour minimum and a $25 trip charge. And I was confident in what I said. And they're like, okay, that's not a problem. I was like, that's weird. They didn't even like flinch on that at all. Weird. Started doing it. The first full year that I charged a trip charge, and we did like over 300 jobs a year on the service side. I think maybe one person told me I shouldn't charge a trip charge out of like 300 and something people, maybe one person. And just by trip charges, a $25 trip charge, I added like an extra $3,000 a year, like instantly, $3,000 extra. Now, I mean, that seemed like a lot, but when you literally don't do anything, I didn't change the value I provided. I didn't change how I did anything. I just added a fee to my service of $25, and it generated an extra $3,000 or so. Like, that's not a limiting belief, right? The limiting belief was me thinking that people would not pay for it. Nothing changed in my clients whatsoever. It's how confident you are in how you deliver the information, right? So, and then that went up to $40 trip charge. So you have to start removing these limiting beliefs. You have to take note of them and then assess the accuracy, assess how factual it is. Let's go back to the questions here. I just saw some come in. There was some earlier that I didn't answer. So, what is that? AJ Fair. When do I know I'm ready to hire a helper for my handyman business? As soon as you need help. As soon as you need help. I can tell you this, for most people, when you're hiring your first hire, you're long overdue from hiring. In other words, you should have hired much quicker than what you have. And it's because of fear of hiring people. What if I don't have enough work? What if I can't keep them busy? What is that called? Based on what I just told you for the last 55 minutes, what would that be called? What if I can't keep them busy? What if I don't have enough work? Somebody in the comments throw in there and tell me what that is. What's that called? Michael PZA, no, a skill set, just startup capital, or not a skill set. That's a limiting belief. Malaysia, what's up, Malaysia? I don't know what that means. I've been to Malaysia. I went to Kuala Lumpur. If you're still on here, I guess that's yep. I'm not sure. You are what you believe. Yep, that's right. We already covered that. Dave says, pay attention. This is how you make money. Thanks, Dave. And then WLF Project says, since the beginning of the year, I started listening to you and take your advice. I've quadrupled. I'm fully booked until next year, March. Third team is starting next week. That is absolutely awesome. Another thing is that when you're booked out further out, if you get booked out, depending on the size of your projects, obviously, but if you're doing like 2-month projects, 3-week projects, 4-month projects, and you're being booked out a year, 2 years out, you need to raise your prices immediately. You should not be booked out more than a year at a time. Now, if you're building houses, that may be a different story, but yeah, Daniel got it right. It's a limited belief. Yeah, it's a fear. That's right. It's all limited beliefs. And fear, by the way, guys, fear, false evidence appearing real. You may have heard that before. False evidence appearing real. There's really only one fear that's legitimate, and that is you are in imminent danger. You're at the gas station getting gas. A dude walks up to you with a gun and points it at your face and says, "Give me all your money." That is a real and imminent danger, right? That is a legitimate fear. Beyond that, everything else is a belief that we have based on past experiences that we believe will be a future problem for us, a future embarrassment, a future failure. So unless it is a true intimate fear, in other words, you're going to lose your life or get seriously hurt, right? Everything else is a belief. And our beliefs are based on our life experiences. This is why it's so critical to remove limiting beliefs from your life. I have a tool inside the Profit Club. It's called the Fear Anxiety Removal Tool. I learned this from one of my mentors. It's a very basic tool. When you have a fear about something or anxiety, you write it down, and then you write down what the opposite of that fear is. So if you had a fear of my clients, if I raise my prices, I won't sell any jobs. In other words, you're going to go out of business. So if you have a fear of going out of business by raising your prices, you would write down the opposite of that. What's the opposite of that, of fear of going out of business? Well, the opposite would be like having wild success, right? Being very financially successful. That would be the opposite. And then you go through a series of questions and answers of answering, what would be the downside of the opposite happening? What would be a positive of going out of business? And what would be the downside of having much success? And so you go through this exercise, and what it basically does is it neutralizes that fear. You don't want to remove the fear. In other words, like be overly excited about taking risk. Like that wouldn't be healthy, but you don't want to be paralyzed by having anxiety. And so you want to neutralize it until that it's a zero. If you think of the sliding scales or the scales we had in like geometry and stuff, where you had, one way goes positive, the other way goes negative, or up and down, however you want to do it. We want to be in the zero. We don't want to be a positive or a negative. And so that's just a tool that I have in there to help remove some of the fears and anxieties that people have around stuff. So the mind, 90% of the time, like 95% of the time, why we're not successful or where we want to be in life or in business is because we have the wrong mindset. We have the wrong limiting beliefs, or we have limiting beliefs that are holding us back. We don't have the right belief system. And that's why it's super important to surround yourself with others who are like-minded of where you want to go. That's one of the things that I love about the Profit Club, my coaching group, is because every contractor in there are professionals and everyone wants everyone else to succeed. There's never a negative comment in there. If someone posts, hey, I'm not struggling with this, what do you guys think? Nobody gets on there and says, well, if you don't know how to put a 2x4 together, then you should shut your doors and go out of business because you're a moron. Like, none of that stuff. It's none of that. It's all positive, uplifting. Everybody wants you to win, right? So that is where we need to get to, guys. And if you're looking for help in getting to that place, reach out to me. Now, some of you on TikTok, you may not be following me in my Facebook group. I have a free Facebook group called the Contractor Profit Blueprint. I just launched an announcement today. Starting tomorrow, I'm going to be revealing my new promotion, my promo that I'm running. It's a special for my coaching group. There's going to be a pretty awesome bonus that comes with this. I've never done this before. It's pretty phenomenal. If you're watching this, you may want to jump into my free Facebook group to find out what that is. You can, if you're on TikTok, you can go to my bio and there's a link in there to the group and you can join that. But tomorrow I'm announcing it. It ends Thursday at midnight Central Standard Time. So if you want to get over these limited beliefs, if you want to learn how to raise your prices in your business, if you want to have a construction business that actually helps you to live the kind of lifestyle that you want, you may want to go sign up for my free group and then pay attention for the post that's going to start tomorrow, 7 a.m. Central Standard Time, where I'm going to announce what this special bonus is, because you may want to be a part of it. And here's one other thing I'll share with you. Next month on the 1st, the prices of my Profit Club are going up, and they're going up substantially. So you can go to my bio, Dave, but it's also, if you search for Contractor Profit Blueprint, Contractor Profit Blueprint. Now, I'll tell you that I just changed the name a couple weeks ago, and the header on there if it shows the header, it will say Profit Group, Contractor Profit Group, and the link is still Contractor Profit Group. I haven't changed it yet and it's on purpose, but the name of the group is Contractor Profit Blueprint. The link, if you search it, is Contractor Profit Group, and the header will say Contractor Profit Group. Okay. If you have any troubles with it, you can just shoot me a message either on TikTok or DM me or whatever, and I'll get you the right information. But that's where I'm posting this special promo, and it's only open to the first 5 people that sign up. So there may be more than 5 that are interested. So I wouldn't wait till Thursday to sign up. So I'm at my hour, guys. I greatly appreciate you tuning in here and watching. Do me a favor before you head out. If you got any value out of what I just told you, double tap the screen if you're on TikTok, and throw some likes in the Facebook group. And I'd appreciate it. It just helps with the whole algorithm. It makes it more popular to help other contractors out. So thank you so much for jumping in here, and I'll be live again on Monday. For TikToks, I used to do Friday afternoon lives. I'm not doing that anymore. So Monday is the only lives I'll be doing going forward. But I appreciate you all tuning in here and watching it. I hope you have a great week. And again, don't wait. Tune into the Facebook group to find out about this special promo that I am running this week. So thank you, guys. I appreciate y'all. Have a great day and a great week.